I'm Sarah Chen, 29 years old, a software engineer who clawed my way out of nothing to build something real. My corner office in Seattle's tech district wasn't handed to me. I earned it through countless all-nighters, brutal code reviews, and proving myself in every room that didn't want me there. 6 months ago, I thought my biggest achievement was landing a senior position at a Fortune 500 company with a salary that finally let me breathe. I was wrong. My real test came when my family decided my success meant I owed them everything, and my younger brother Jake thought he could take it all without asking. It started with a phone call on a Tuesday night, my mother's voice tight with urgency, telling me we needed to talk about Jake's future. I should have known then that nothing good follows those words. But I drove to their house in Tacoma anyway, that same cramped rental they'd lived in for 20 years, hoping maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd see me as more than just the family bank. I pulled up to see Jake's beat-up Honda in the driveway, and my stomach twisted. He was 25 now, still living at home, still drifting between part-time gigs and grand ideas that never materialized. I'd watched him coast through life while I fought for every inch, and some bitter part of me resented how easy he had it. But he was my brother, and I loved him despite everything. Inside, my parents sat at the kitchen table with Jake between them, his usual cocky grin plastered across his face. My mother poured coffee nobody wanted while my father cleared his throat 3 times before speaking. "We've been talking," he said, "and Jake has an opportunity, a business opportunity. He needs capital to get started." I sipped my coffee, waiting for the pitch I knew was coming. Jake leaned forward, animated now, talking about a cryptocurrency trading platform he wanted to launch. He had connections, he said. Investors interested. He just needed seed money to prove the concept. $50,000. The number hung in the air like smoke. I set down my cup carefully, buying time. "That's a lot of money," I said. "What's your business plan? Your market research?" Jake waved his hand dismissively. "It's all in my head. I just need someone who believes in me." My mother reached across the table, her fingers brushing mine. "You've done so well for yourself, honey. We're so proud. You could help your brother the way we helped you." That stung because it wasn't true. They hadn't helped me. Not really. When I applied to college, they told me to get a job instead, that education was a waste for girls who'd just get married anyway. I worked 3 jobs to pay tuition, lived in my car for a semester when rent got too high, survived on ramen in spite. Every dollar I had, I'd earned myself. But pointing that out would start a fight I didn't have energy for. I promised to think about it, kissed my mother's cheek, and drove home feeling hollowed out. Jake texted me every day after that. "Just checking in, sis. Thinking about the opportunity." My parents would call with updates about investors waiting, deadlines approaching, chances slipping away. The pressure built like water behind a dam until I felt myself cracking. Then one night, Jake showed up at my apartment unannounced. I lived in a sleek high-rise near Pike Place Market, all floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture I'd chosen carefully. It was my sanctuary, proof that I'd made it out. He walked in like he owned the place, whistling at the view. "Nice setup," he said, grabbing a beer from my fridge without asking. Must be nice having all this money. I bit back my first response, tried to stay civil. "What do you want, Jake?" He sprawled on my couch, making himself comfortable. "I need an answer about the investment. I've got people waiting." I sat across from him, studying my brother's face, looking for something genuine beneath the charm. "What happens if it fails?" I asked. "What's your backup plan?" He laughed, that easy, confident sound that had gotten him out of trouble his whole life. "It won't fail. I've got this handled, but you haven't answered my question." His smile faded slightly. "Why are you being difficult? I'm family. You're supposed to support family." There it was. That word they always use like a weapon. Family means helping each other, my father would say. Family means sacrifice, my mother would add. But somehow family only seemed to mean those things when they needed something from me. I told Jake I'd transfer the money by the end of the week, just to get him out of my apartment. He hugged me, called me the best sister in the world, and left whistling that same irritating tune. I sat in the dark for hours after, wondering why saying no felt impossible. The $50,000 left my account on Friday. I watched the numbers drop, felt physically sick, but told myself it was an investment in family peace. Jake sent a thumbs-up emoji in response. No thank you. No business plan. Just confirmation he'd gotten what he wanted. For 3 weeks I heard nothing. Then my mother called, breathless with excitement. Jake's business is taking off, she said. He's meeting with investors, making deals. I should have been happy, but something felt off. I started digging, using skills I'd honed in tech to track digital footprints. What I found made my blood run cold. Jake had no cryptocurrency platform. No investors. No business at all. Instead, he'd used my $50,000 as a down payment on a Tesla and blown the rest on a vacation to Miami with his girlfriend. His social media was full of photos, him grinning on South Beach, champagne in hand, living like he'd earned it. I confronted him via text, my fingers shaking with rage. Saw your Miami pics. Nice Tesla. Where's the business? His response came an hour later. Had to make some strategic pivots. Building credibility takes investment in image. I'll pay you back. That's when I knew. He'd never planned to start a business. He'd played me, used family obligation as leverage to fund his lifestyle. And my parents, whether they knew or not, had helped him do it. I needed to know how deep this went. I called my Aunt Linda, my mother's younger sister who'd always been the black sheep for speaking uncomfortable truths. We met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, and I showed her everything I'd found. Her face hardened as she scrolled through Jake's Instagram. This isn't the first time, she said quietly. She told me about money my grandmother had left me when I was 16, about $5,000 meant for college. My parents had given it to Jake instead, claiming he needed it for a car to get to work. He'd bought a motorcycle and wrecked it within a month. They never told me. Just let me struggle through school thinking my grandmother hadn't thought of me. The betrayal cut deeper than Jake's lies. I'd spent years believing I wasn't worthy of help, that I had to prove myself alone. But there had been help. They'd just given it to someone else. I went to see Marcus Webb, a lawyer friend from work who specialized in fraud cases. I explained everything, provided documentation, asked what options I had. He reviewed it all carefully, then delivered news I didn't want to hear. Legally, it's a gift unless you have a written loan agreement, which I didn't. Jake had been smart enough to make sure of that. But Marcus had another suggestion. Go public, expose what he did. It won't get your money back, but it might prevent him from doing it to someone else. I thought about it for days, weighing justice against family loyalty. Could I really do that to my own brother? Then Jake posted another photo, this time from the expensive restaurant downtown, tagged with his girlfriend and friends. Living the dream, the caption read. That decided it. I wrote everything down, every text, every lie, every manipulation. I posted it on my blog, which had a modest following in the tech community. I named no names, but included enough details that anyone who knew us would recognize the story. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from people who'd experienced similar betrayals, who understood the specific pain of family exploitation. My post got shared, picked up by a local news site doing a piece on financial fraud within families. And then my phone exploded. My mother called first, hysterical. How could you air our private business? You've humiliated us. Jake sent threats. My father left a voicemail about betraying the family trust. But the messages I focused on were different ones. Other people Jake had borrowed from, small amounts they'd written off as gifts. A former friend who'd invested in a previous business idea that never materialized. A pattern of behavior my family had enabled and hidden. I changed my number, blocked my immediate family on everything, and told my Aunt Linda she was welcome in my life, but not as a messenger for the others. The peace that followed was strange. Quiet in a way my life had never been. But Jake wasn't done. 2 months after my blog post, I got a call from my bank. Someone had attempted to access my accounts using old security information. The IP address traced back to my parents' house. Jake had tried to hack me. I reported it to the police, filed for a restraining order, and watched my family's reaction. My father claimed it was a misunderstanding. My mother begged me to drop the charges. Jake never apologized, just disappeared from social media, his Tesla repossessed when he couldn't make payments. The restraining order was granted. The judge, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, looked at the evidence and said something that stuck with me. Family is supposed to be a safe place. When it becomes a source of harm, you have every right to protect yourself. That's not revenge. That's survival. I threw myself into work, earned a promotion, started mentoring young women in tech who reminded me of my younger self. I moved to a new apartment, one nobody in my family knew about, and furnished it with things that made me happy instead of things that proved I'd succeeded. My Aunt Linda visited sometimes, bringing news I didn't ask for. Jake had moved back in with our parents, working retail, his grand dreams deflated. My mother had started therapy, something about confronting her role in enabling him. My father refused to speak about any of it, pretending nothing had happened. I felt nothing hearing these updates. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a distant sort of sadness for what we could have been if things were different. On my 30th birthday, I threw a party in my new place. Friends from work, people I'd met through hobbies, my Aunt Linda. No one there shared my blood except Linda, and she'd earned her place by choosing honesty over comfort. We toasted to new beginnings, and someone asked if I'd reconcile with my family eventually. I thought about it, really considered it. Maybe someday, I said, if they can acknowledge what happened without minimizing it. If Jake can take actual responsibility instead of making excuses. If my parents can see that protecting him meant abandoning me. But I'm not holding my breath. Later that night, I stood on my balcony looking out at Seattle's lights, the Space Needle glowing in the distance. I thought about the girl who'd lived in her car, who'd eaten ramen for months, who'd believed she had to earn love through achievement. She'd thought family was everything, that blood meant loyalty, that sacrifice would eventually be recognized and repaid. She'd been wrong about all of it, but she'd survived anyway, built something real from nothing, became someone worth being. The revenge I'd taken wasn't the blog post or the police report. It was this: living well, succeeding without them, proving that their approval had never been necessary, that I was enough all by myself. They'd tried to make me smaller, to keep me tethered to their dysfunction, to drain me dry funding someone else's dreams. And I'd refused. The hardest part wasn't cutting them off. It was accepting that I'd spent years trying to earn something they were never going to give freely. My parents' love came with conditions, with hierarchies, with favorites. Jake had always been golden and I'd always been useful. Understanding that freed me in ways revenge never could. Sometimes I still get emails from people who read my blog post, thanking me for putting words to their experience. They tell me about their own families, their own struggles with obligation and guilt, and the terrible math of always giving more than you receive. I tell them what I learned. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot save someone who's using you as a life raft while pushing you underwater. You cannot sacrifice yourself into someone else's love. There is no amount of money, no amount of success, no amount of proving yourself that will change how some people see you. And that's okay. That's their limitation, not yours. I don't know if my family will ever understand what they did, if Jake will ever grasp that betraying trust has consequences beyond immediate gain, if my parents will recognize that enabling one child meant failing another. Maybe they will, someday, when enough time has passed and they can face uncomfortable truths. But I'm not waiting around to find out. I built my life once from nothing. I can build it again. Better this time, surrounded by people who see my worth without needing me to prove it. That's not revenge. That's just living. And I'm finally good at it. My apartment feels like mine now, not a museum of achievement I'm afraid to touch. I cook elaborate meals just for myself, take vacations without justifying the cost, buy art because it speaks to me. I date casually, nothing serious. learning what I actually want instead of what I think I should want. Work remains challenging, fulfilling, a place where my competence speaks louder than my history. I lead a team now, and I try to be the kind of boss I needed when I started out. Someone who sees potential, who gives real opportunities, who doesn't confuse loyalty with exploitation. The tech industry is still brutal, still full of people ready to take credit for your work. But I know how to protect myself now, how to document everything, how to say no without guilt. My life isn't perfect. Some days I still feel that hollow ache where family used to be, that phantom limb pain of relationships severed. I see parents with their adult children having brunch, siblings texting inside jokes, and wonder what it's like to have that ease. But then I remember the price of entry to that club, the constant vigilance, the never knowing when the next demand would come. And I know I made the right choice. You can't heal in the environment that wounded you. Sometimes the only way forward is walking away, even when every instinct screams that family is supposed to be forever. Because forever doesn't mean anything if it's built on resentment, if it requires you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. I learned that lesson at $50,000, which honestly feels cheap compared to what it could have cost. My peace of mind, my sanity, my ability to trust. Jake tried to take those too, but I didn't let him. That's the real victory, not revenge in the dramatic sense, but in the quiet reclaiming of my own life. In choosing myself when everyone else chose him. In drawing boundaries and defending them even when it hurt. I don't know what happens next. Maybe my family changes, maybe they don't. Maybe Jake faces real consequences. Maybe he just finds new people to manipulate. Maybe my parents eventually see the damage they enabled. Maybe they go to their graves believing I'm the ungrateful one. It doesn't matter anymore. Their story is theirs to write. I'm busy writing mine.